Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 12. We're going to wrap up our assistive technology unit by talking about a specific case study. You're going to get a case of a few different students. You pick one. You don't have to do something about all of them, but pick one, and you're going to write about a two to three page paper with some references about how you think you can best help the student. So, if you look more closely at the directions, now that you've explored assistive technology in a little bit more detail, including things like social stories, you now have a lot of tools in your tool belt to be able to help a student with a specific problem. So let's imagine that we're in a class that requires students to be up, active, talking to each other, moving around, and it might be a loud environment. So I frame this as a science lesson, a science lab in the second grade classroom, using some of the science standards. So in this case, there's water. They're actually doing an experiment. If you've ever done the Cartesian diver thing, there's a little bowl of water, and you've got your little guy, and you're experimenting with buoyancy. So if you are in the high school programs and you'd rather explore something at a different level, just think about this idea of a active classroom where students are working together in small groups rather than something where everybody's sitting in a seat and doing something with the whole class. And you'll have kind of the same concept. This is something where students are going to have to talk to each other. It might be loud in there. It may be hard for everybody to focus or hear each other. There may be a lot of movement. So, what are some of the, think about those conditions, and then think about your students. So you have 5 different students you can choose from. Again, you only need to choose one, but everybody's got their own thing that's going on. So Angela is autistic. She has trouble communicating. She uses an AAC device, which you may have learned about in the last couple of weeks, but it's a device where students have a touch panel of some kind in order to show others what she's thinking. In other words, she doesn't communicate with her voice very much, if at all. She also likes things like robots and electronic friends, like Blue Bee Pals, for example. Look that one up. That makes her feel more comfortable when she's communicating. Otherwise, she would prefer not to speak because that's her nature, the nature of her disability. And you have Jimmy. He's in a wheelchair. He has limited use of one hand. He likes his iPad or a tablet because of the touch screen. It's a lot easier for him to work that than a mouse. He also likes to use Dragon Naturally Speaking or another tool for speech to text. So, he does do well with those kinds of programs. So he's talking to his computer or his tablet, and he's still able to use his tablet fine, but he's limited in some of the things that he can do. And he, of course, moving around the classroom may or may not be easy for him depending on how that classroom is laid out and what's going on. Then you have Reginald. He has a reading disability. So his reading and writing is affected, not so much his math skills. So if in science classroom, this may or may not be an issue until it comes to writing a lab report or something like that. He likes word prediction software, like Co-Writer is a name of one that you could look up. And it does take him sometimes a little longer to get through things because of that reading disability that he does have, but he can usually do pretty well with support. Lupita has low vision. She's not blind, but she has very low vision. She needs things magnified. You can do that on a regular computer. You can do that on a phone. There's lots of places where you can do that, but she does not read Braille, because many people with low vision do not. So she fits in that category. She's never learned it. And she does like tablets because she can use them for speech to text. And she doesn't have to worry about the mouse pointer and all that business. She can be touching, and she can still be typing relatively easily. But she prefers the real keyboard. because then she can actually feel the keys. Touch screen keyboards directly are kind of difficult for her, as you might imagine, because it's hard for her to see them. And then you've got Austin, who has a hearing disability. He can hear somewhat, but he's had this difficulty hearing, and so therefore he's learned ASL, and often has an interpreter with him during school. So there's a person with him during school hours. He can only hear when things are amplified a lot. So imagine Austin in this busy, active classroom with a lot of people talking at once. He may have a hard time. So what are some of the technologies that can help him focus, that can help him not have to worry too much about everything that's going on, so he can focus on the people in his group and things going on? He also loves videos. They help him learn, but they need to be captioned, of course, because otherwise he won't be able to hear them. So a lot of students, a lot of unique needs. What kind of things can you do to help this student, whichever one you pick, through, and now this could include specific AT. It could consist of several different products. Assume that you can get access to all these different things. Maybe get them from the Patents Library to try them with that student. And even flip the script if you're the special ed teacher instead of the general ed teacher. What are some of the things that you'll need to maybe do with that student to help reinforce their active learning in this environment? When might you say, pull them to do individual work, things like that? What would you do, especially those of you who are in the special ed program? Try and think about that side of things. What would you do as the special ed teacher, and maybe what would you do as the general ed teacher? And then also offer advice. What if you're working with the student maybe as a special ed teacher and you've got another teacher there? What advice are you going to give them to help them work with their technology and work better in that classroom? So that's the guiding questions for our paper. Remember to have at least 3 references. These might be specific sites about assistive technologies or articles, special needs issues, whatever else that you're bringing up. Try and bring in some resources about that stuff. And it's a paper, so you can structure that in the typical form, and have some fun exploring this in a little bit more detail. Many of us now have some kind of real specific things that we're interested in and we want to learn more about. So this is your chance to dig in a little deeper. So whether that's something that's close to you, like somebody in your family or friends that have disabilities and you're looking for ways to help them, or it just might be that you've developed interest in certain things. Whatever the case, think about it, do some research, and come up with some ways to help one of these wonderful students.